I'm a 32-year-old regular guy who's been married to Kat, who's 30, for the past 2 years. We dated for 2 years before we got married, and for the most part, we've always been happy together. But lately, things have taken a turn for the worse, and it all started a couple of months ago when Kat blindsided me with a suggestion I never saw coming. She approached me out of the blue and said she wanted us to open up our marriage, to spice things up, as she put it. I was stunned. It was like my whole world stopped for a moment because, in all the years I've known Kat, this was the last thing I ever expected to hear from her. I'm not trying to sound like some entitled or overly controlling husband, but hearing her say those words really messed me up. I've always believed that an open marriage is a dangerous game, one where the risks far outweigh the rewards. From what I've seen, it often leads to someone getting hurt, and sometimes it damages both people beyond repair. So, when she suggested it, my gut reaction was a firm no. It's not that I'm against trying new things or finding ways to keep our relationship exciting, but I've always felt that the excitement should come from us, just the two of us. I want our marriage to stay between us, with no third party stepping in, and I made that very clear to her. Kat didn't take it well. She looked hurt, maybe even disappointed. It's rare for me to turn her down because I love her deeply, and I usually do whatever I can to make her happy, even if it means making compromises on my end. But this time, I just couldn't bring myself to agree. She didn't say much after that, but I could tell by the way she acted afterward that things weren't okay. She seemed distant, lost in her thoughts, and it created this tension between us that just wouldn't go away. I started questioning myself, wondering if I had done something wrong or if there was something I wasn't giving her. I began to doubt my abilities as a husband and even questioned if I was still enough for her. I wanted to sit down and talk it through, to get to the bottom of why she felt the way she did, but Kat shut down. She didn't want to discuss it anymore. Kat works as a consultant with a demanding job that often has her working odd hours, covering different time zones. It's not uncommon for her to be glued to her laptop late into the night, trying to balance her hectic work life. I have a busy job, too, but I'm fortunate that my work doesn't stretch beyond our own time zone, so I'm home in the evenings, which gives me a bit of an edge in terms of our work-life balance. But Kat's crazy schedule made it nearly impossible to find a good moment to sit her down and talk about what was really bothering her. In the quiet moments when she was out of the house, I would replay that conversation over and over in my head. I started to blame myself for how I reacted. I thought maybe if I hadn't snapped with such a quick no, we wouldn't be in this weird place now. I felt terrible, like I had let her down by not at least trying to understand where she was coming from before shutting her down. About 2 weeks after that initial conversation, I decided to try and make it up to her. One night, I managed to get home from work early, and I spent the evening preparing her favorite meal. When she walked in the door, the look on her face was priceless. She seemed genuinely happy, and for the first time in weeks, it felt like things were back to normal, even if just for a moment. We hugged, laughed, and shared a quiet dinner together. It was like old times, and I felt that maybe this was the moment I could use to gently bring up her suggestion again. So, I asked her about it, trying to keep my tone calm and open, hoping she'd feel safe enough to share her thoughts. But instead of opening up, Kat's mood changed in an instant. She accused me of tricking her, of setting her up for some kind of emotional ambush. I was shocked. I hadn't tricked her at all, I just wanted to understand what was going on in her mind, to hear her out without judgment. Her reaction hit me hard, and I found myself losing my cool. I blurted out the question that had been haunting me since that first conversation: was she unhappy with me? Was I not satisfying her anymore? That's when Kat finally let her guard down and told me what was really on her mind. She explained that at her job, she's surrounded by a bunch of young interns, fresh out of college. They're in their early 20s, living life with wild abandon, going to parties, hooking up at every opportunity, and sharing their crazy stories without a care in the world. Their tales of excitement and adventure made her feel like she was missing out on something, like there was this whole world of fun that she had bypassed by settling down so early. She admitted to feeling a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, whenever she listened to them talk about their carefree lives and spontaneous hookups. As I listened to her, I began to understand her perspective a little better. It wasn't really about me, or about us, it was more about her own sense of missing out on something she never got to experience. I told her that I got where she was coming from. It's human nature to be drawn to shiny, new things, and it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of someone else's life, especially when it seems so different from your own. But I also told her that I wasn't comfortable with the idea of an open marriage. I love what we have too much to risk it on a whim. Our relationship is the most valuable thing in my life, and I don't want to jeopardize it. I opened up about my own past, telling her about how, before we met, I was just like those interns, living on the edge, partying hard, and chasing whatever thrill came my way. I've been through the emotional roller coaster of that lifestyle. Sure, it was fun for a while, but eventually, those wild nights left me feeling empty inside. I was searching for something more meaningful, and I found that in Kat. She was the first person who made me feel grounded and truly content, and I never want to go back to that empty feeling I had before we met. I don't know where we'll go from here, but I hope Kat realizes that what we have together is worth more than any fleeting thrill. Our love, our bond, it's something special, and I'm willing to fight to keep it. I just hope she feels the same way, and that together, we can find a way to move past this and come out stronger on the other side. I never wanted to go back to my old life. When I proposed to Kat, I knew she was the one I wanted to have children with and grow old beside. I poured my heart out to her, sharing my thoughts on open marriage. I made it clear that it wasn't something I wanted, but if she was really interested, we could reconsider. She immediately shut down the idea, nodding in agreement with everything I said. I thought she understood my perspective, but I was wrong. For the next few days, things seemed normal. But about a week later, I noticed a drastic change in her behavior. She became distant and cold. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off, saying it was just work-related stress. Over the last few weeks, her attitude has only gotten worse. She's been throwing tantrums over the smallest things and mocking me, calling me outdated. I asked what she meant by that, and she told me I was too stubborn and stuck in my ways, refusing to keep up with the times. I was confused. I dress well, stay updated on the latest music, and watch all the trending shows. What trend was I not following? I asked if her behavior was about my reluctance to open our marriage. She just nodded and said, maybe. What kind of answer was that? Her mixed signals left me baffled. Meanwhile, her work schedule kept getting busier. It used to be that she'd work late a few days a month, but now she's coming home late almost every night. Sometimes, she doesn't come home until dawn. When I confronted her about it, she said she was gunning for a promotion and needed to prove herself to get it. She's always been ambitious, and I admire her for that. But honestly, I'm starting to wonder if she's being truthful. Still, I don't want to let negative thoughts take over or jump to conclusions without evidence. Yesterday, something happened that pushed me over the edge and made me write this post. I've read countless stories here, and I just needed to get this off my chest and see if anyone has any advice. Hear me out. I got home around 7 p.m., a bit earlier than usual since I normally don't get back until 8 o'clock. I'd been craving lasagna for a while, and since it's Kat's favorite too, I decided to make it for dinner. It took me about an hour and a half to prepare it just the way Kat likes it. I garnished it, feeling excited to surprise her. By then, it was already 10 p.m., so I texted Kat to ask when she'd be home. She replied that she'd be working late and wouldn't be back until after midnight. My heart sank, and my excitement disappeared. I spent the next hour playing video games, trying to distract myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling of disappointment. I was starving but held off on eating because I wanted to have dinner with her. Something inside me told me to go pick her up from work. I'd never done that before unless we had plans afterward, but it seemed like the perfect way to kill time and surprise her with a warm welcome. So, I grabbed my keys and drove to her office. It's a standalone building, so it's easy to see anyone coming or going. As I pulled up, I felt nervous but hopeful that she'd be happy to see me. But when I got there, I saw her walking out, not alone, but with a man I didn't recognize. They were standing close, laughing and talking in a way that made my stomach twist. I froze, watching them from a distance, my mind racing with a million questions. I didn't confront her, I just sat there in shock, unable to process what I was seeing. I turned around and drove home, lasagna untouched on the kitchen counter. Now, I'm sitting here, wondering what to do next, feeling more lost than ever. I sat in my car, parked right outside Kat's office building, feeling the chill of the late-night air seep in through the cracked window. The streets were emptying out, the shops were closing one by one, and the city that was so lively during the day now felt like a ghost town. It was 12:30 a.m., and Kat was nowhere to be seen. I had already texted her a few times, but my messages went unread, and I didn't want to come off as overbearing by calling her. Part of me thought she might have already left before I even got here, slipping out unnoticed while I was on my way. Frustration mingled with worry as I decided to go upstairs and check her office. The building was still bustling with the energy of the night shift workers, the glow of computer screens and the low hum of conversation filled the space. It was hard to believe that just a few floors up, Kat's world was still buzzing with life while the rest of the city was shutting down. I approached the reception desk and asked about Kat, hoping they'd tell me she was still working. The receptionist, without looking up from her screen, said that Kat had already left. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had come all this way for nothing. I felt stupid for not thinking things through, for assuming she'd still be here. Driving home, my mind was racing with possibilities. Maybe she had gone out with colleagues, or maybe she was caught up somewhere else. But when I pulled up to the house, the sinking feeling in my stomach grew deeper. The driveway was empty, and the house was dark. She wasn't home. Panic started to claw at me, and 1,000 thoughts flooded my mind. My feet felt unsteady as I paced the living room, staring at my phone, willing it to light up with a message from her. But there was nothing. I wasn't even thinking about cheating, that was the furthest thing from my mind. All I could think about was whether she was safe, whether something had happened to her. I didn't know what to do. She hadn't been at this job long enough for me to know any of her colleagues, and I had no way of reaching out to anyone who might know where she was. The helplessness was suffocating. I eventually collapsed on the couch, exhaustion and anxiety pulling me into a restless sleep. I jolted awake with the first light of dawn, a mix of dread and hope pushing me to check our bedroom. My heart pounded as I opened the door, and there she was, Kat, curled up under the covers, sleeping peacefully like nothing was out of the ordinary. Relief washed over me, but it was laced with confusion. How had she gotten home? Why hadn't she let me know? I slipped into bed beside her, grateful she was safe but still uneasy. I must have drifted off again because when I woke up, she was already dressed, fixing her hair in the mirror, getting ready for another day at the office. I asked her casually when she had come home, trying to sound as normal as possible. She replied, "Around 3 a.m. It was such a hectic day. I got stuck in a meeting with an Asian client, and it went on forever." I nodded, trying to process her words. Then I asked when she had actually left the office. She shrugged, barely looking up. "About 2:30-ish, I guess." Her response sent a shiver down my spine. Something wasn't adding up. The receptionist had told me she left hours earlier, around midnight. Either Kat was lying, or someone at the office had given me the wrong information. My mind was still foggy from the chaos of the previous night, so I didn't press further. I just watched her gather her things and leave for work as if nothing was wrong. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Kat. She sounded hesitant, and after a moment of awkward silence, she asked if I had been at her office the night before. My mind raced. Apparently, the receptionist had told her I had shown up, and Kat seemed genuinely surprised. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of shift that receptionist was pulling that she would be there so late, but I brushed the thought aside. I told Kat the truth, that I had come by because I was worried about her. There was another pause before she finally explained. She said she had left her office in the afternoon for a meeting at her client's office, located in a different part of the city. Her explanation made me pause. She went on to clarify that the client was an Asian company, but they had a U.S. office where she spent the night in Zoom meetings with employees working on Asian time. It was a plausible story, and yet something about it didn't sit right with me. Maybe it was the way she rephrased her statements, like she was trying to find the right version that would make sense. I wanted to believe her, I really did. After all, it's not unusual for companies to have international operations, especially in the digital age where time zones are just a number. But even as I tried to reassure myself, doubts lingered. The pieces just didn't fit together perfectly. I was left feeling stuck in a limbo of uncertainty, wondering if I was being paranoid or if there was something more to Kat's story than she was letting on. I find myself torn between wanting to trust her and the nagging feeling that there's something she's not telling me. Do I let this go and hope it was all just a misunderstanding, or do I confront her and risk opening a door I might not be ready to walk through? The uncertainty is eating away at me, and I feel more lost than ever, caught between my need for answers and my fear of what they might be. I've confronted Kat about her suspicious behavior several times in the past, hoping each time that my instincts were wrong and that this was all just a misunderstanding. I had poured my concerns out in previous posts, seeking advice from strangers because, frankly, I felt like I was losing my mind. Many of you shared valuable suggestions, and I took several of them seriously, trying to get to the bottom of what was really going on. I'm grateful to all of you for the guidance, but this update, it's not easy to share. It's been 2 weeks since I last wrote, and what I've discovered has left me shaken to my core. For weeks now, Kat has been coming home late, always with some excuse about work keeping her busy. Our home has become a silent battlefield, we barely talk, and when we do, it's just surface level, transactional conversations. There's a heavy tension in the air, like we're just two strangers living under the same roof. I'd been trying desperately to find a way into her phone or email, to get some hard evidence about what was really going on. But she's careful, too careful. Every password, every app, locked up tight like a vault. I racked my brain for different ways to uncover the truth but kept hitting dead ends. Then, 2 days ago, something unexpected happened. Kat was on the bed, talking to her mom on the phone. Her mom has been struggling with a kidney problem for years, and her latest blood test results weren't looking good. Kat seemed genuinely upset, and out of concern, I took her phone to listen in on her mom's voice, hoping to catch any updates on her condition. Kat was distracted, lying on the bed, and didn't seem to mind. As I held the phone, I noticed the screen was unlocked, and my heart raced as I saw a few chat notifications pop up. I couldn't resist. Something clicked inside me, this was my chance. I kept my cool, walking casually into the bathroom while holding her phone, still pretending to listen to her mom's voice on speaker. I locked the door behind me, trying to act normal, but my hands were shaking. I glanced at the screen, and there it was, right in front of me, a message revealing Kat's plans to meet someone that day for what she called a fun ride. My stomach twisted. This wasn't work, this wasn't innocent, this was the confirmation I dreaded. I quickly switched to her social media DMs, and what I found shattered me. Kat was not just having an affair, she was involved with multiple coworkers. The messages were explicit, full of flirtation and worse, arrangements for secret meetups that I'd never known about. It felt like a knife to the gut, twisting deeper with every word I read. I scrolled through the gallery, desperate to find something solid, something undeniable, and there it was. Picture after picture of my wife in compromising positions with other men. My beautiful wife, the woman I had trusted with my heart, was cheating on me with her colleagues. It was all laid out in front of me like a twisted photo album of betrayal. Suddenly, Kat realized I had taken her phone into the bathroom. She started banging on the door, her voice frantic as she demanded her phone back. I was running out of time, but I needed proof, something I could hold on to when the confrontation inevitably came. I quickly emailed every explicit photo to myself and erased any trace of what I'd done from her phone. My heart pounded, and I felt sick to my stomach. Meanwhile, Kat's voice was getting louder, her knocking more insistent. I couldn't stand the sound of her voice anymore. I opened the door, shoved her phone into her hands, and locked myself back in. I needed to get a grip, to calm down before I did something I'd regret. I could feel the rage boiling inside me, the betrayal stinging like a fresh wound. But instead of exploding, I took a deep breath and let the anger settle. I needed to think clearly. In the messages, Kat had shared the location and time of her planned meetup that day. I had all the details, every single one. I walked out of the bathroom, grabbed my car keys without a word, and headed out the door. As I left, I heard Kat call my name softly, almost hesitantly, but I ignored her. I was on a mission now, and nothing she could say would stop me. I drove straight to the location, a hotel known for its privacy. I walked in, scanning the lobby until I found the darkest corner where I could sit unnoticed. I wasn't there to create a scene, I just needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to witness how easily she could lie to me, how effortlessly she could pretend everything was fine while sneaking off to meet someone else. My heart was pounding as the minutes ticked by. I stared at the entrance, waiting for Kat to show up, feeling every second stretch out painfully. I didn't know what I'd do when I saw her, but I knew one thing, I couldn't turn a blind eye any longer. I sat there, cloaked in shadows, watching the door like a man waiting for the inevitable crash of a tidal wave. I was done playing the fool, done second-guessing myself. All I wanted was to see how far she would go, how comfortably she would walk right into this affair without a second thought for our marriage, for me. And as the clock struck 5 p.m., all I could do was brace myself for the heartbreaking reality that was about to unfold before me. I arrived at the hotel around 3 p.m., hoping to find some clarity, or maybe just the courage to confront her. But by the time 5 p.m. rolled around, I was already downing shot after shot, drowning in whiskey and my own reckless thoughts. A part of me wished I had confronted her right at the house when I had the chance, but when the moment came, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Maybe I was too numb, too overwhelmed to face the reality of what was happening. So I chose the bottle instead, losing myself in the burn of each drink. As I sat there in the dimly lit lobby, watching people come and go, every minute felt like an eternity. It was 6 p.m., and she still hadn't shown up. A twisted part of me thought she must have figured out I was onto her and decided to change the location. But honestly, I was too far gone, too drunk to think straight or care much about their plans. I just sat there, slumped in my seat, ordering drink after drink, letting the alcohol drown out my pain and anger. By the time it hit 7 p.m., I was a mess, lost in a fog of rage, betrayal, and a whole lot of whiskey. And then I saw her. Kat walked in like she didn't have a care in the world, and with just that one glance, my entire world came crashing down. My vision was already blurred, but seeing her felt like a punch to the gut. 4 hours of heavy drinking had done more than just blur my vision, it had blurred my sense of reality, too. It's like I was watching my life fall apart in slow motion, powerless to stop any of it. I don't even remember how I got up from my seat, it felt like my legs were moving on their own, stumbling towards the reception area where she was signing in, laughing like nothing was wrong. I tapped her on the shoulder, my hand shaking more from anger than from alcohol. She turned around, her eyes widening in surprise, and all I could muster was a sarcastic, "Good luck with your fun ride." I might have said more, probably something bitter and stupid, but my mind was a complete haze. She tried to grab my hand, desperate to explain herself, but I could barely hear her. I don't even remember the exact words she said, all I felt was this overwhelming urge to get away from her, away from the betrayal that was written all over her face. I pulled my arm free and stormed out of the hotel, feeling like my heart was about to explode from the mix of rage and heartbreak. I managed to hail a cab, barely holding it together as I mumbled my friend Lee's address to the driver. The whole ride felt like a blur. All I could think about was how my life had turned into some twisted nightmare. By the time I reached Lee's door, I was so far gone that I just collapsed right there on his doorstep. The next thing I remember, it was Sunday afternoon, and I woke up on Lee's couch, my head pounding and my mouth dry as sandpaper. I had slept for 16 hours straight, and the weight of everything hit me all over again. Lee was there, sitting with a cup of coffee, ready to listen. He didn't judge, didn't interrupt, just let me spill everything out, every twisted detail of what I'd seen and felt. He made me some lunch and handed me a glass of fresh lemonade, trying to ease me back to some semblance of normalcy. Lee's a good friend, he always has been. When I finished telling him everything, he looked me dead in the eye and told me to get my act together. Freeze all your joint accounts, he said, change every password you have, and get an STD test. You can't take chances with this. But in that moment, those practical steps felt like the least of my worries. I was still reeling from the betrayal, too stunned to care about money or passwords or anything else. I reached for my phone, which had been lying dead on the table. When it finally powered on, the screen flooded with notifications, over 100 missed calls, dozens of voicemails, and countless pleading messages from her. I didn't have the stomach to read any of them. Each notification felt like a punch to the gut, a reminder of how much of a fool I'd been. I ignored all her calls and messages, blocking her on every platform I could think of. I couldn't bear to hear her voice, to read her words. It all felt so hollow, so meaningless now. Today is Monday, and I've called in sick at work for the next few days. I have no idea how to handle this mess. My emotions are all over the place, and I've been drinking just to keep the pain at bay. Lee's been helping me look up lawyers, trying to get me back on my feet, but all I really want to do is disappear and leave this whole nightmare behind. It's been 2 months since that night, and somehow, I'm still standing. I read all the messages from you guys, your support, your advice, and it gave me the push I needed to start picking up the pieces of my life. I froze all the joint accounts, changed every password, and got tested for STDs. Thankfully, those came back clear. Lee helped me find a good lawyer, and I handed over all the evidence I had, including the photos I'd taken from Kat's phone. For now, I'm crashing at Lee's place until the divorce is finalized. He needed a roommate, and I needed a place to stay, so it worked out for both of us. I don't know what the future looks like, but for the first time in a while, I feel like I'm taking back control of my life. It's not easy, and I still have bad days, but I'm learning to stand on my own 2 feet again. It's a slow process, but I'm determined to come out of this stronger. I'll keep you all posted as things progress, but for now, I'm just trying to focus on moving forward, one step at a time. Ever since I left, Kat has been trying non-stop to contact me, pleading with me to give her another chance and start fresh. She's been reaching out to Lee, begging him to help her reconcile our marriage. She told him she still loves me and that all those hookups meant nothing to her, that she was just exploring herself and wanted to feel desirable. I'm not sure if I'm missing something here about these Gen Z concepts of feeling desirable, or if this whole thing is just a complete sham. I genuinely don't know what to make of it anymore. A few days after my last update, I sent Lee to our house with the keys to pick up my things. I thought it would be a straightforward task since it was a regular workday, and I assumed Kat would be at the office. But when Lee got there, he found her at home. She broke down in front of him, begging for his help, desperate for some kind of lifeline. Lee, knowing how unpredictable Kat could be, made sure to tell her I was staying at a hotel, not his place. He didn't want her showing up at his apartment, causing a scene. Kat then confided in Lee that she had quit her job. She admitted that everything spiraled out of control when those young interns at work started flirting with her. They made her feel wanted, attractive, and alive in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. They roped her into trying new experiences, and soon she found herself wrapped up in their world of late-night parties and reckless behavior, including the illicit stuff they were involved in. What started as a one-time fling to feel alive again quickly became an addiction she couldn't shake. Kat confessed that those interns didn't make much money and used her to pay for their nights out, leaning on her to foot the bill. She eventually caught on to the fact that they were just exploiting her, but by then, she was already too deep into that lifestyle. When Lee asked why she hadn't come clean to me sooner, Kat claimed that her suggestion of opening up our marriage was her way of trying to ease her guilty conscience. But when I refused, she felt too ashamed to admit what she had done. Honestly, what kind of logic is that? Asking me for an open marriage after you've already cheated on me. It's absurd. Since then, Kat has been dragging her feet when it comes to signing the divorce papers, trying to blame me for everything that went wrong. She even tried to say that I was the one who pushed her into having those one-night stands by refusing to spice up our marriage. It's the weakest excuse I've ever heard, and she knows it. Kat's now demanding alimony, claiming that her mental distress from the divorce warrants compensation. If anyone deserves compensation, it's me, for having to go through the absolute gut-wrenching pain of betrayal. To make matters worse, Kat's sister Amy reached out to me not long after, pleading for me to take Kat back. She told me that Kat was struggling, sinking into severe depression because of everything that's happened. Those interns, the same ones she sacrificed our marriage for, had now turned on her. They had spread compromising pictures of her around the office, using them to brag and mock her behind her back. She became the laughingstock of her workplace, branded as an easy catch among her peers. The rumors spread like wildfire, tarnishing her reputation so badly that she felt she had no choice but to leave her job. Now, Kat is struggling to find new work because the gossip has spread beyond her office, damaging her professional network and making it nearly impossible for her to get a referral. I told Amy that Kat had made her choice. She traded a stable, loving marriage for a few months of cheap thrills, and now she has to deal with the consequences. I've moved on, and I'm not going to let myself get dragged back into the chaos that Kat has created for herself. I've been focusing on rebuilding my life, staying away from the bottle, hitting the gym, eating better, and keeping my mind occupied with work. The divorce proceedings have been dragging on because Kat keeps stalling, but my lawyer assured me that it's only a matter of time before everything is finalized. Despite everything, I'm determined to come out of this stronger. I refuse to let Kat's choices define me or the life I'm building for myself moving forward.